Every morning, the same route, same faces, same routine, until the day someone wearing my face got on the bus. The 742 bus was always the same. Same route, same stops, same faces settling into their morning stupor. I'd been taking this ride for 3 years, long enough to know that Mrs. Chen always sat 2 rows behind the driver, that the college kid with the oversized headphones got off at Maple Street, and that nobody ever sat in the torn seat near the back. The fluorescent lights flickered as we pulled away from Central Avenue, casting everything in that sickly white glow that made everyone look like corpses. I settled into my usual spot. 3rd row, window seat on the right, and let my mind drift into that familiar commuter trance. That's when I saw him. At first, it was just a peripheral impression. Someone sitting across the aisle, maybe 4 rows back. But something about the shape of his head, the way he held his shoulders, made me glance over. My stomach dropped. He looked exactly like me. Not similar, not resembling. Exactly. The same brown hair with that stubborn cowlick that never stayed flat. The same narrow nose, the same angular jaw, even the same navy jacket I'd bought last month at the outlet mall. I turned fully in my seat, staring. He was reading a newspaper, the same morning edition I had folded in my bag. But while I sat straight-backed and alert, he slouched slightly to the left, where I always tapped my fingers against my knee when nervous. His hands lay perfectly still. The resemblance was perfect, but the details were wrong. His hair was parted on the opposite side. The jacket, identical to mine, had the zipper pulled higher than I ever wore it. And his expression, God, his expression was all wrong. I'd seen my face in mirrors for 32 years, knew every line and angle, but I'd never seen it wear that particular look of calm satisfaction. The bus hit a pothole, jarring me back to reality. I told myself I was imagining things. Stress from work, lack of sleep, the tricks your mind plays during the morning commute. People have doppelgangers all the time, right? 7 billion people in the world. Of course, some of them would look similar. But when I looked again, he was still there, still reading his paper with my face. I caught my reflection in the window and compared it to him. Same cheekbones, same slightly crooked left eyebrow. Even the small scar on my chin from a childhood accident was there, a pale line just visible beneath the fluorescent glare. The bus's engine hummed differently today, a lower pitch that seemed to vibrate in my chest. The familiar smell of diesel and industrial disinfectant had an undertone I couldn't place. Something metallic and organic that made my mouth taste wrong. I gripped the metal seat back in front of me, the cold steel anchoring me to something real. This couldn't be happening. People don't just encounter their exact doubles on public transportation. There had to be an explanation. But as the bus rounded the corner onto Elm Street, I noticed he turned his head at precisely the same moment I did, as if we shared the same instinct to check the street. And for just a second, in the reflection of the bus window, I couldn't tell which face was mine. I tried to look away, but my eyes kept sliding back to him. Every few seconds I'd steal another glance, and each time the wrongness deepened. He folded his newspaper exactly the way I always did, quarters, then in half, but he folded it backward, text facing out instead of in. When I shifted in my seat, he shifted too, but a fraction of a second later, like an echo made of flesh. The other passengers seemed oblivious. Mrs. Chen dozed against the window, her breath fogging the glass. The college kid bobbed his head to whatever was leaking from his headphones. A woman in scrubs scrolled through her phone, thumb moving in steady, hypnotic circles. None of them noticed that there were 2 of me on the bus. I reached into my jacket pocket for my phone, keeping my movements casual. In my peripheral vision, I saw him do the same thing. Same pocket, same casual gesture. But when I pulled out my phone, he pulled out a newspaper clipping. My chest tightened. I knew that clipping. It was from last week's local paper, an article about the promotion I'd gotten at work. I'd cut it out to send to my mother, then forgotten about it in my jacket pocket. How did he have it? I turned my phone's camera on and angled it like I was taking a selfie. But really, I was trying to get him in frame. Through the small screen, I could see both of us clearly. Me, tense and wide-eyed. Him, still reading, wearing my face like a comfortable mask. But when I looked at the photo I'd just taken, only I was in it. The seat behind me was empty. I nearly dropped the phone. My hands were shaking now, a fine tremor that I couldn't control. I looked up from the screen, and he was still there. Solid and real, running his finger down the newspaper column exactly the way I always did when I read. The bus lurched as it took the turn onto Fifth Avenue. I checked my watch, 7:58, right on schedule. But the route felt longer today, the familiar streets stretching out like they were being pulled through taffy. That's when I realized something that made my blood turn to ice water. He was reading the article about my promotion, the one I never told anyone about except my mother, the one where they'd gotten my middle name wrong, printing James instead of Jacob. I had been annoyed about that mistake for days, but as I watched him read, his lips moved slightly, and I could swear I heard him whisper, "David James Morrison, senior analyst." The wrong name. He was saying the wrong name from the article. I touched the window beside me, needing something cold and solid to prove I was real. My reflection looked back at me, but something was off about it too. The part in my hair was on the wrong side, the same side as his. Panic rose in my throat like bile. I looked from my reflection to him and back again. In the window, I looked exactly like he did, slouched, calm, wearing that expression of satisfied contentment I'd never seen on my own face. The bus's air conditioning kicked in with a mechanical wheeze, but instead of cooling, it brought a smell like ozone and something else. Something that reminded me of the time I'd accidentally left raw meat in a hot car. He folded the newspaper again and looked directly at me. We had the same eyes, but his held knowledge mind didn't. Like he knew something about me that I'd forgotten. Like he knew which one of us belonged here. I had to know. Whatever this was, whatever was happening, I couldn't just sit there pretending it wasn't real. My legs felt unsteady as I stood, but I forced myself to walk down the aisle toward him. Each step felt wrong, like moving through thick air. The other passengers blurred at the edges of my vision, their faces becoming indistinct, but he remained perfectly in focus. He didn't look up as I approached, just kept reading that newspaper with my promotion announcement, occasionally making small sounds of approval that I recognized as my own. I stopped beside his seat. "Excuse me." He looked up then, and it was like staring into a funhouse mirror. Every detail perfect, but wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. When he smiled, it was with my mouth, but I'd never smiled like that. "Yes?" His voice was mine too, but the cadence was off. Too confident, too satisfied. I struggled to find words that didn't sound insane. "I think we might be related." He looked familiar. He tilted his head, studying me with curious interest. "Do I? That's funny. I was just thinking the same thing about you." He gestured to the empty seat beside him. "Why don't you sit down, David?" I hadn't told him my name. "How do you—" "David Jacob Morrison," he continued, still using my voice, but pronouncing my name like he was reading it from a script. 32 years old. Works at Henderson and Associates. Lives alone in that studio apartment on Cedar Street. The one with the broken garbage disposal you keep meaning to fix. Oh, my mouth went dry. "Who are you?" "Who am I?" He laughed, and it was my laugh but hollow, like an echo in an empty room. "That's an interesting question, David. Who do you think I am?" I looked around the bus for help, for someone to witness this impossible conversation, but the other passengers were all staring at me with identical expressions of mild concern, as if I was the one acting strange. "Sir," Mrs. Chen called from her seat. "Is everything all right? You seem upset." I turned back to the man, to my double, but he was looking at Mrs. Chen with gentle reassurance. "He's fine, Mrs. Chen. Just a bit confused today. Aren't you, David?" She nodded sympathetically. At him, not at me. The college kid had pulled off his headphones and was watching with the casual interest of someone observing a minor disruption. When he looked at us, his gaze lingered on him, then slid past me like I wasn't quite there. "You should sit down," my double said softly. "You're making a scene." But I started, then stopped, because when I looked around again, everyone on the bus was staring at me. All of them. Their eyes held the same expression, patient but slightly annoyed, like they were waiting for a child to stop misbehaving. None of them were looking at him. "The next stop is yours, isn't it?" he asked, checking a watch identical to mine. 7th and Main, your usual stop." I'd never gotten off at 7th and Main in my life. My stop was Oak Street, 6 blocks further. But as the bus began to slow, I heard the driver call out, "7th and Main. David, stop." The doors opened with their familiar hydraulic hiss. Cool morning air drifted in, carrying the scent of coffee and car exhaust. Everyone was still staring at me, waiting. "Go on," my double said gently. "This is where you get off." I stumbled toward the front of the bus, legs moving without my permission. As I stepped down onto the sidewalk, I heard him say something to Mrs. Chen about having a nice day, using my voice, living my life. The doors closed behind me with finality. I stood on the sidewalk at 7th and Main, watching my bus disappear around the corner. The familiar blue and white city transit colors looked wrong in the morning light, like a photograph with the saturation turned too high. This wasn't my stop. This had never been my stop. When I looked around, the street felt familiar in ways that made my skin crawl. Coffee shop on the corner, Java Junction, had windows covered in promotional decals I somehow knew by heart. The crosswalk signal beeped in a rhythm that felt embedded in my muscle memory. I walked toward the shop's glass front, needing to see my reflection, needing to prove to myself that I was still real. But when I caught sight of myself in the window, I stopped dead. The face looking back at me was slouched slightly to the left. The hair was parted on the wrong side, and that expression of calm satisfaction that had looked so wrong on him now felt natural on my features. I touched my face with trembling fingers. The reflection touched back, but a fraction of a second late. Inside Java Junction, a barista I'd never seen before looked up and waved. "Morning, Dave? The usual?" The usual. I didn't have a usual here. I'd never been here before in my life. But my feet carried me through the door anyway, and my mouth said, "That'd be great, thanks," in a voice that was definitely mine but felt like wearing someone else's clothes. "Large coffee, black and a blueberry muffin," she said, already reaching for a cup. Starting the day right. I hated blueberry muffins. Had always hated them since I was a kid. But when she handed me the paper bag, my stomach growled with anticipation. I paid with money from my wallet, but the bills felt foreign in my hands. The barista smiled and said, "See you tomorrow, Dave." Tomorrow, like this, was routine. Like I'd been coming here every morning for years. I stumbled back outside, clutching the coffee and muffin. My hands were shaking so badly that hot liquid sloshed over the rim, burning my fingers. But the pain felt distant, like it was happening to someone else. 3 blocks down, I found myself standing in front of an apartment building I'd never seen before. Brown brick, green awnings, a small garden out front that someone clearly tended with care. My keys were already in my hand. The apartment key fit perfectly in the lock of Unit 3B. Inside, everything was exactly where I expected it to be, but nothing was where it should be. The couch faced the wrong wall. The books on the shelf were titles I'd never read but somehow remembered loving. Photos on the mantle showed me at events I'd never attended, with people I'd never met, but I remembered them all. I sank onto the couch that wasn't mine and bit into the muffin I didn't like. It tasted exactly the way I thought it would, sweet and familiar, like something I'd been eating every morning for years. The coffee was perfect too. Black, no sugar, slightly bitter in exactly the way I preferred. On the coffee table, today's newspaper was folded in quarters, text facing out. There was a small article circled in red pen about a promotion at Henderson and Associates. David James Morrison, senior analyst. James. Not Jacob. I set down the coffee with hands that weren't shaking anymore. In the window's reflection, my face looked calm and satisfied. Somewhere across town, a man who looked exactly like me was probably sitting at my desk, living my life, being me better than I ever had. And I couldn't remember why that should bother me. After all, this had always been my apartment. This had always been my life, hadn't it?